GOP Senator Chuck Grassley faced questions from constituents at a town hall in Fort Madison, Iowa, over the Trump administration mistakenly deporting a Maryland man to a notorious Salvadorian mega prison.
Are you going to bring that guy back from El Salvador? Yeah. Why not?
Well, because that's not a power of Congress.
The Supreme Court said to bring him back.
Judges are.
Yeah.
And the president is upholding the Constitution.
He's defined the Constitution.
You're on the Judiciary Committee.
Trump don't care.
Guatemala or El Salvador is an independent country. The president.
Speak up, please. We can't hear you.
The president of that country is not subject to our U.S. Supreme Court.
We would like to know what you, as the people, the Congress, who are supposed to rein in this dictator, what are you going to do about it? These people have been sentenced to life imprisonment in a foreign country with no due process. Our government cannot do anything.
Trump isn't a king.
Why won't you do your job, Senator?
Yeah.
Tempers flared at Republican town halls across the country on Tuesday, a sign of growing anger, at least among some Americans, with President Trump's policies.
But even in the face of testy constituents, those lawmakers continue to show loyalty to the president. In suburban Atlanta, disruptions by protesters at an event for Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene led police to arrest 3 people. Now, instead of answering questions face-to-face, Greene required that they be submitted in writing ahead of time and mocked some of the critical ones she read out loud. Senator Chuck Grassley faced his own crowd of frustrated voters in Iowa and was repeatedly urged to stand up to President Trump.
Are you going to bring that guy back from El Salvador? Are you? Why not?
Well, because that's not a power of Congress.
The Supreme Court said to bring him back.
We would like to know what you, as the people, the Congress, who are supposed to rein in this dictator, what are you going to do about it? These people have been sentenced to life imprisonment in a foreign country with no due process. Our government cannot do anything.
We're joined now by CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Paul Begala, as well as former governor of Arkansas, Republican Asa Hutchinson. It's been a while since we've had the two of you back on, so thank you for joining us. It's going to be an interesting conversation. As always, Governor Hutchinson, let me start with you, because what we saw there with Senator Grassley was not on the Upper West Side of Manhattan or in Washington, D.C., in the suburbs, anywhere close to there. This was in Iowa. And yet you're hearing some constituents, not necessarily supporting these migrants themselves, but supporting the rule of law and quoting that one voter saying, why aren't you standing up in the face of how he described the president to be a dictator? How do you react to that?
Well, my reaction to it is that the opposition, those that are on the left, are going to be the most vocal at those town hall meetings. And I think that's what you saw there with Senator Grassley. I've been in Iowa. It is a very divided state in many ways. You're going to hear from both sides. But the overarching message that I think the senators are getting is you need to exercise the power of the legislative branch and just not roll over for the president. So that message is being conveyed, not just by those on the left, by those on the right as well. And I think that's the expectation, that there will be some growing independence from those on the Republican side in Congress as you see Trump become more visceral in his attacks and disregard for the law.
Paul, let me bring you in, because we heard one, as Bianna was just touching on, one voter essentially describe President Trump as a dictator. And Asa was just saying that a lot of people are saying, listen, we can't all just roll over for the president. There has to be people in Congress who stand up to him. What do Republicans in Congress risk, Paul, by standing up to Donald Trump?
Well, they risk the wrath of Mr. Trump, who within the Republican base is, of course, very powerful. He also now, President Trump is allied with the richest man in the whole wide world. but they risk more by not standing up. Look at what happened in Wisconsin. They had a Supreme Court race, a state that Mr. Trump won very narrowly by about a point. The liberal there won by over 10 points, even though Elon Musk spent millions of dollars of his own money in support of the conservative. The Musk money, the Trump endorsement actually hurt the conservative, didn't help. And I was watching that clip you had, that town hall. Asa ran for president, spent a lot of time in Iowa. I have to say our country and his party would have been a lot better off if he'd have won. But Lee County, where that town hall was, it's in the southeast tip of Iowa for our international viewers. It's right on the Mississippi River. It's beautiful country, just beautiful. My old boss and Asa's fellow Arkansan, Bill Clinton, won that county by 30 points. Guess what? Donald Trump just won it by 30 points. It is exactly one of those fulcrum places where American politics has been turning. And so if a legend like Chuck Grassley, who has been in the Senate for 44 years, if he's catching hell in Lee County, Iowa, that is a terrible sign for those Republicans.
Can I stick with you, Paul? Because as we noted, the issue at hand in that town hall was the treatment of Abreu Garcia and the fact that this is an administration that is defiant, despite however vaguely they are wanting to interpret what the Supreme Court said. They are defiant not to bring him back to the United States. But this is clearly a battle that President Trump prefers to have and would like to have. And I'm wondering if you think, as we saw Senator Van Hollen actually travel to El Salvador. I don't know what he'll be able to accomplish there, but he's a constituent of his, so that is why he is going. Do you think that they're falling into a trap by going into this battle with the president? I'll quote you a line from Politico this morning, which said, "The White House believes it has public opinion on its side, and that every time the Democrats or the judiciary or the media complain about the treatment of the deportees, they're walking deeper into a carefully set trap." What do you make of that argument?
I'm sorry to laugh. They don't do anything carefully in the Trump White House. Okay. I mean, he won fair and square. I'm not an election denier. I'm a Democrat. But come on, they're not being careful about this. They took a man who was legally in America, who had no charges against him, and didn't only deport him, which would be problematic. They put him in one of these supermax prisons run by some eccentric leader in El Salvador. Come on. So no, I'm not worried about that. And actually at that town hall, to come back to that, they not only were criticizing their beloved Senator Grassley about the status of this one guy who'd been deported and incarcerated, they were hammering him about tariffs, which are killing our farmers, or can, about veterans, about Social Security, about Medicare and Medicaid. In other words, it's a whole cluster of things. But I think the Trump people are selling Americans short if they believe that we don't care about the rule of law. That we were founded on the notion that we don't want a king and a tyrant. And Mr. Trump, in the eyes of many, and not just Democrats, a lot of independents, has gone way too far.
Asa, since Paul brought up tariffs, I want to pose that question to you, a question about tariffs. The thing about tariffs is that not only is there so much confusion, but it changes by the day. From one day to the next, you have no idea which tariffs are going to be on hold and which tariffs are going to be implemented. In fact, there was a Bloomberg reporter who essentially said that he typed into ChatGPT, explained Donald Trump's tariff strategy to me, and what ChatGPT gave him was essentially nonsense. It just sounded like nonsense in terms of what it looked like when he read it out. So just walk us through how all of this is actually going to affect Republicans when it comes to the midterms. You're thinking about the possibility of a recession, of layoffs, of consumer spending slowing later on this year. How is all of that going to impact the midterms, do you think?
Trump has the advantage in simple language that, by and large, many Americans support. For example, being tough on illegal immigrants into our country, or deporting those that have gang affiliation or pose a risk. That's broadly supported. And you get into the nuances about, well, did he have due process? Was he really a gang member? That has to be resolved in the courts, and it should be, versus simply being a political issue, because that's not a winning issue for the Democrats. In terms of tariffs, it's the same boat. We ought to have tougher tariffs on China that are targeted, but the broad-based tariffs and going after our allies is confusing. It is disruptive. and not just to our foreign friends, but it's also disruptive to our farmers. And ChatGPT obviously doesn't know what to make sense of it. And so the simple language is in Trump's favor. In the end, he wants to be able to control the dialogue. I think over time, as people understand it more and get hit by it harder, then you're going to see that support wane.